The sun blazes mercilessly over the Mesopotamian desert, its golden rays reflecting off the endless dunes of sand. The air is thick with it, shimmering like a mirage, as if the gods themselves are mocking the mortals' bile. Amid this unforgiving landscape, a broken man kneels, his once proud figure reduced to a shadow of its former self. This is Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome, whose insatiable greed and unrelenting ambition have led him to this grotesque and tragic end. Crassus, a name synonymous with unimaginable wealth, was not just a man of riches but a man of boundless hunger, for power, for respect, for immortality. He was the third pillar of the first triumvirate, an uneasy alliance with two of Rome's most formidable figures, Thus Pompeius Magnus, known as Pompey the Great, and Gaius Julius Caesar, the rising star of Roman politics. Together, they held the reins of the Republic, but their partnership was fraught with tension, ambition, and rivalry. In 53 BC, Rome stood at a crossroads. The Republic was a cauldron of political intrigue, military conquests, and social unrest. The first triumvirate, though powerful, was fragile, held together by mutual convenience rather than trust. Pompey, the celebrated general, basked in the glory of his military triumphs. Caesar, the cunning politician and military genius, was carving his name into history with his campaigns in Gaul. And then there was Crassus, the richest man in Rome, whose wealth could buy anything, except the respect and legacy he so desperately craved. The story of Marcus Crassus is not just a tale of wealth and power, it is a cautionary tale of how unchecked greed and ambition can lead to ruin. Crassus' life was a paradox. He was a man who had everything, yet felt he had nothing. His vast fortune, amassed through shrewd real estate speculation, slave labor, and political maneuvering, made him the envy of Rome. But wealth alone was not enough. Crassus yearned for something more, military glory, the kind that would etch his name alongside Rome's greatest heroes. The central theme of this story is clear: the things we desire most can often become our undoing. Crassus' greed was not limited to gold and silver, it extended to power, recognition, and immortality. His ambition burned brighter than the desert sun, blinding him to the dangers that lay ahead. It was this ambition that drove him to challenge the Parthian Empire, a decision that would seal his fate and forever alter the course of Roman history. As the story unfolds, we will witness the rise and fall of Marcus Crassus, a man whose insatiable hunger for more led him to a tragic and grotesque demise. From his early days as a shrewd businessman and political operator to his ill-fated campaign against the Parthians, Crassus' journey is a testament to the dangers of unchecked ambition. His story serves as a haunting reminder that even the mightiest can fall, and that the things we covet most can destroy state unity in the end. The scorching desert, the molten gold, the shattered dreams, these are the images that define the legacy of Marcus Crassus. His death was not just the end of a man, it was the end of an era. The first triumvirate, already fragile, crumbled in his absence, paving the way for civil war and the eventual fall of the Roman Republic. Crassus' story is a warning whispered across the centuries, a timeless metaphor for the perils of greed and ambition. As we delve deeper into this tale, we will explore the life of Marcus Crassus, the choices that defined him, and the consequences of those choices. From the bustling streets of Rome to the desolate sands of Mesopotamia, this is the story of a man who had everything yet lost it all. A story of ambition, greed, and the ultimate price of hubris. The scorching desert fades into the bustling streets of Rome, where the story of Marcus Crassus truly begins. The camera pans over the grandeur of the Roman Forum, alive with merchants, politicians, and citizens. Amid the chaos, a figure emerges: Crassus, a man whose wealth is unmatched, yet whose eyes betray a hunger that gold alone cannot satisfy. Crassus' rise to power was as calculated as it was ruthless. Born into a prominent family, he inherited not just wealth but also a keen understanding of Rome's political and economic machinery. Yet, His true ascent began during the chaos of Sulai's dictatorship. As Rome burned with civil strife, Crassus saw opportunity. He purchased properties at rock-bottom prices from those proscribed by Sulla, amassing a fortune that would make even the gods envious. But Crassus was not content to be merely rich. Wealth, in his eyes, was a tool, a means to an end. He used his fortune to fund political campaigns, secure alliances, and manipulate the Senate. He built a network of clients and supporters, ensuring his influence extended to every corner of Rome. Yet, for all his power, Crassus remained in the shadow of two men, Pompey the Great and Julius Caesar. The script shifts focus to Crassus' inner turmoil. Despite his immense wealth, he was never truly respected by the Roman elite. Pompey, the celebrated general, was adored by the people and hailed as a hero. Caesar, with his charisma and military genius, was rapidly rising to prominence. Crassus, on the other hand, was seen as a man who bought his way to power, a businessman, not a warrior. This lack of respect yielded Crassus. He envied Pompey's triumphs and Caesar's daring exploits. He longed for the kind of glory that could not be bought, the kind that could only be earned on the battlefield. His ambition was not just to be wealthy or powerful, it was to be remembered, to leave a legacy that would outshine even the greatest of Rome's heroes. The camera lingers on Crassus as he gazes at a map of the known world. His eyes fixate on the Parthian Empire, a land of immense wealth and strategic importance. The Parthians, with their vast riches and formidable cavalry, were a tempting target. To Crassus, they represented not just an opportunity for conquest, but a chance to prove himself as a warrior and secure his place in history. The script delves into the political landscape of Rome. The Senate, wary of Crassus' ambitions, opposed his plans for a campaign against Parthia. They saw it as a reckless endeavor, driven more by greed than strategy. But Crassus was undeterred. He used his wealth to bypass opposition, bribing officials and rallying support among his allies. He even invoked the gods, claiming divine favor for his campaign. The narrative builds tension as Crassus prepares for war. He assembles a massive force of 40,000 soldiers, including his son Publius, a promising young officer eager to prove himself. The streets of Rome buzz with anticipation as the army marches out, their banners fluttering in the wind. Crassus, clad in gleaming armor, rides at the head of the column, his face a mask of determination. The script takes a moment to explore the relationship between Crassus and his son. Publius, though loyal to his father, harbors doubts about the campaign. He questions the wisdom of challenging the Parthians, whose military prowess is well known. But Crassus, blinded by ambition, dismisses his son as second chance. This is our destiny, he declares. The gods have willed it. We will return to Rome as heroes. As the army crosses the Euphrates, the tone shifts. The lush landscapes of Rome give way to the harsh, unforgiving terrain of Mesopotamia. The soldiers, though disciplined, begin to feel the strain of the journey. Supplies run low, and morale starts to waver. Crassus, however, remains resolute. He sees every obstacle as a test of his resolve, a challenge to be overcome. The script introduces a new character, General Surena, the brilliant Parthian commander. Surena is a stark contrast to Crassus, calm, strategic, and deeply attuned to the terrain and his enemy's weaknesses. The Parthians, aware of the Roman invasion, begin to prepare their defenses. Surena devises a plan to lure the Romans deeper into the desert, where their strength will become their weakness. The narrative builds suspense as the two forces inch closer to confrontation. Crassus, emboldened by early victories, grows overconfident. He dismisses reports of Parthian movements, convinced that his superior numbers will guarantee success. But the audience, privy to Surena's strategy, senses the impending disaster. The act ends with a foreboding image. Crassus standing atop a hill, gazing out at the vast desert before him. The sun sets, casting a golden glow over the landscape, a cruel irony, as the gold he covets will soon become the instrument of his demise. The camera lingers on his face, capturing the mix of determination and hubris that defines him. The stage is set for the next chapter, where ambition will collide with reality, and the seeds of Crasso's downfall will begin to bear fruit. The audience is left on edge, eager to see how the story unfolds, yet dreading the inevitable tragedy that awaits. The sun rises over the Mesopotamian desert, casting long shadows over the Roman camp. The soldiers stir, their faces weary from the relentless heat and the endless march. Crassus stands at the center of the camp, his armor gleaming in the morning light. He surveys his army, 40,000 strong, a force believes to be invincible. The Euphrates River is now far behind them, and the Parthian heartland lies ahead. The narrative picks up where the last act left off, with Crassus emboldened by early victories. His army had encountered little resistance as they crossed into Parthian territory. Small skirmishes with disorganized Parthian forces had only served to inflate Crassus' confidence. He saw these minor victories as proof of his superiority, dismissing any warnings of a larger threat. But the audience knows better. The script shifts focus to General Surena, the Parthian commander, whose calm and calculated demeanor contrasts sharply with Crassus' growing arrogance. Surena watches the Roman advance from a distance, his scouts reporting every move. He knows the desert is his ally, a weapon more powerful than any sword or spear. Surena's strategy is simple yet brilliant: lure the Romans deeper into the desert, where their strength, numbers and heavy infantry, will become their greatest weakness. The Parthians, with their swift cavalry and mastery of the terrain, will strike when the Romans are at their most vulnerable. The tension builds as the Romans march further into the desert. The lush landscapes of the Euphrates give way to barren wastelands. Supplies begin to dwindle, and the soldiers grow restless. Crassus, however, remains undeterred. He dismisses the concerns of his officers, including his son Publius, who urges caution. Victory is within our grasp, Crassus declares, his face filled with conviction. The Parthians are cowards, hiding in the shadows. We will crush them and return to Rome as heroes. The script delves deeper into the relationship between Crassus and Publius. Publius, though loyal to his father, begins to question his judgment. He sees the strain on the soldiers, the cracks in their morale. But Crassus, blinded by ambition, refuses to listen. Their conversations grow more tense, foreshadowing the tragedy to come. The narrative shifts to the Parthian forces, who are preparing for the decisive confrontation. Surena's army is smaller but far more mobile. His cavalry, armed with powerful composite bows, is the backbone of his strategy. The Parthians are masters of psychological warfare, using feints and ambushes to sow confusion among their enemies. The stage is set for the Battle of Carre. The Romans, confident in their numbers, marry into the open plain, unaware that they are walking into a trap. The camera captures the vast expanse of the battlefield, the shimmering distorting the horizon. The tension is palpable as the two armies face off. The battle begins with a Parthian feint. A small force engages the Romans, drawing them further into the desert. Crassus, eager for a decisive victory, orders his troops to pursue. The Parthians retreat, their movements swift and calculated. The Romans, weighed down by their heavy armor, struggle to keep up. Then, the trap is sprung. The Parthian cavalry, hidden behind the dunes, emerges in full force. Thousands of horse archers encircle the Roman army, their arrows raining down in a relentless barrage. The Romans, trained for close combat, are ill-equipped to deal with this new kind of warfare. The script captures the chaos of the battlefield in vivid detail. The sound of arrows whistling through the air, the cries of wounded soldiers, the dust and blood that fill the air, It is a scene of utter carnage. Crassus, standing at the center of the formation, watches in horror as his army begins to crumble. The narrative focuses on Publius, who leads a cavalry charge in an attempt to break the Parthian lines. His bravery is undeniable, but it is also his undoing. The Parthians, anticipating the move, surround Publius and his men. The camera lingers on Publius as he fights valiantly, his face a mix of determination and fear. But the outcome is inevitable. Publius and his men are overwhelmed, their bodies falling one by one. The script does not shy away from the brutality of the scene, emphasizing the futility of their sacrifice. The camera cuts to Crassus, who receives the devastating news of his son's death. The psychological blow is immense. Crassus, the man who had always prided himself on his strength and resolve, is broken. The Parthians, ever the masters of psychological warfare, parade Publius severed head on a spear, a grotesque display meant to demoralize the Romans. The script captures Crassus' reaction in heart-breaking detail. He falls to his knees, his face a mask of grief and despair. The man who had once seemed invincible is now a shadow of himself. His soldiers, witnessing their leader's collapse, lose what little morale they had left. The Roman army, exhausted and demoralized, begins a chaotic retreat. The Parthians, relentless in their pursuit, pick off the stragglers one by one. The desert, with its scorching heat and unforgiving terrain, claims as many lives as the Parthian arrows. The survivors stumble into the town of Carre, seeking refuge. But their strength is broken, their spirit shattered. Crassus, once so full of ambition and confidence, is now a man consumed by regret. He realizes too late the cost of his greed and hubris. The act ends with a haunting image. Crassus, sitting alone in the ruins of Carre, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a dying fire. The camera lingers on his eyes, which now reflect not ambition but despair. The audience is left to ponder the fragility of human ambition, the fine line between greatness and ruin. The stage is set for the final act, where Crassus' tragic journey will reach its grotesque and unforgettable conclusion. The audience, though dreading what is to come, cannot look away, drawn by the inexorable pull of the story's tragic arc. The fires of Carre burn low as the remnants of the Roman army usual in the shadows of the ruined town. The once mighty force of 40,000 soldiers has been reduced to a broken, demoralized mass. The desert night is cold, a stark contrast to the searing heat of the day, and the silence is heavy with despair. Crassus sits alone, his armor tarnished, his face gaunt and hollow. The weight of his decisions presses down on him like the very sands of the desert. The narrative picks up directly from the chaos of the retreat. The survivors, battered and exhausted, have found temporary refuge in Carre, but they know it is only a matter of time before the Parthians strike again. Crassus, once so full of confidence and ambition, is now a man consumed by regret. The death of his son Publius haunts him. The image of his severed head paraded on a spear seared into his mind. The script delves into Crassus' internal conflict. He is a man who has always believed in his own destiny, in his ability to shape the world through sheer will and determination. But now, faced with the consequences of his hubris, he begins to question everything. The camera lingers on his face as he stares into the dying embers of a fire, his thoughts unspoken but painfully clear. The Parthians, led by the brilliant General Surena, are not content to let the Romans escape. They surround Carre, cutting off any hope of retreat. Surena, ever the strategist, knows that the psychological battle has already been won. The Romans are broken, their leader a shadow of his former self. Now, it is only a matter of delivering the final blow. The script shifts to the Roman camp, where Crassus' officers plead with him to take action. Some suggest surrender, others propose a desperate attempt to break through the Parthian lines. But Crassus, paralyzed by grief and indecision, can only mutter vague reassurance. His once commanding presence has been replaced by a hollow shell, and his men begin to lose faith. The tension builds as Surenna sends an envoy to the Roman camp. The Parthians offer Crassus a chance to negotiate, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. But the audience, privy to Surenna's cunning, knows this is a trap. The script captures the unease among the Roman officers as they debate the offer. Some see it as their only chance for survival, while others suspect treachery. Crassus, desperate to salvage what little dignity is left, agrees to the parley. The camera follows him as he prepares for the meeting, his movements slow and deliberate. He dons his armor, not out of confidence but as a final act of defiance. The weight of his decisions is palpable, every step heavy with the knowledge that he may not return. The meeting takes place on the open plain, under the watchful eyes of both armies. The script captures the stark contrast between the two leaders. Surenna, calm and composed, exudes confidence and control. Crassus, on the other hand, is visibly weary, his face lined with grief and exhaustion. The dialogue is tense, every word a veiled threat or a desperate plea. As the negotiations unfold, it becomes clear that Surenna has no intention of letting the Crassus live alive. The Parthians, enraged by the Roman invasion and emboldened by their victory, see this as an opportunity to send a message to Rome. The tension reaches its breaking point as the meeting turns violent. Crassus is seized by the Parthians, his officers killed or captured. The script does not shy away from the brutality of the scene. Crassus, once the richest and most powerful man in Rome, is dragged before the Parthian nobles, his dignity stripped away. The camera captures every detail, the jeering crowd, the glint of weapons in the firelight, the look of defiance that flickers in Crassus' eyes even in the face of death. The narrative builds to the grotesque climax of Crassus' story, his execution. The Parthians, in a display of both cruelty and symbolism, decide to kill him in a manner befitting his greed. Crassus is forced to his knees, his arms bound, as molten gold is poured into his mouth. The camera lingers on the scene, capturing the horror and irony of the moment. The gold he worshipped, the symbol of his ambition and greed, becomes the instrument of his death. The script emphasizes the symbolism of the execution. The molten gold, flowing like liquid fire, is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. The audience is left to reflect on the tragic irony of Crassus' fate, that the very fiend he desired most was the fiend that destroyed him. The Parthians, ever the masters of spectacle, use Crassus that as a tool of propaganda. His severed dead is sent to the Parthian king, who uses it as a prop in theatrical performances mocking Roman ambitions. The script captures the humiliation of Rome, the shattering of its myth of invincibility. The act ends with a haunting image, the molten gold cooling in the sand, a grotesque monument to Crassus' greed. The camera pans out, showing the desolate battlefield, the broken Roman army, and the vast desert stretching into the horizon. The audience is left with a sense of both awe and dread, a reminder of the fragility of human ambition and the price of hubris. The stage is now set for the conclusion, where the legacy of Crassus' actions will be explored, and the broader consequences of his downfall will be revealed. The audience, horrified by the events of this act, is compelled to see how the story ends, drawn by the timeless themes of ambition, greed, and the ultimate cost of human desire.